it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello everyone, so here we are, the anti-penultimate pod, Sam, with just 2 more to go after this one as we head into the final couple of game weeks and what has been a stop-start campaign for us, but hopefully a wildly successful one for many of you that we've assisted you on throughout the season. I'm joined as always by Sam, who I'm sure is on cloud 9 following Southampton's fantastic, famous 0-0 victory against Man City on the weekend. Not playing any football, but still getting points, Sam. The Southampton way is back. How are you, mate?
Well, I'll tell you what, if that's not playing football, then I don't know what football is anymore, because that was absolutely beautiful, wasn't it? And honestly, I didn't even watch the first half because I had no hope. And then it got to 0-0 at half time. I was like, I should probably just keep an eye on this one. I cannot believe we didn't concede. But yeah, I'm obviously just happy, relieved, I suppose, to just get over the line and not be officially the worst team ever. Yep. Under no illusions that it is an unbelievably bad season, though. So it is embarrassing and hilarious in equal measure to be celebrating that point. But I'll take every little win and every little point I can possibly get as a Southampton fan this year. So yeah, I was actually pretty happy with that one. And I entered today's pod in a relatively good mood because of it. So as always, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's pod, we'll run through team updates quickly. And then as we're going into the final couple of weeks, we're going to move pretty quickly on to best transfers to start off the pod and ask ourselves what's doable from certain different ranks and hopefully applicable to you guys as well, whether you're chasing or defending, which picks and which players are going to be the best ones to help guide you to the rank that you want or the mini league position that you want at the end of the season. Looking at differentials, of course, but also which players are going to kind of shield you against any oncoming threats coming up from below you, beneath you in the ranks at the moment that you want to guard against. Of course, as always, we've got the game week preview. We've got the knee jerk, including another discussion on Salah and the selling intensifying at the moment. Possibly a quick word on Isak in there as well. Bold claims and best captains, obviously, to wrap up the pod with our teams going into game week 37. And we think, and we say this once or twice a season, Tom, but we think this is going to be a bit of a shorter one. It never ends up that way. So let's see how we go. But it is Tuesday, the 13th of May. Game week 36 is in the books. And it's safe to say both of our FPL teams are in one of those beach clubs that I think we saw Arne Slot celebrating in during the week. Isn't that right, Tom?
Yeah, under the cabana, getting the tequilas in. You know what? It's all over, lads. It's all over. Let's just enjoy. Who cares? We've got a game on Saturday, but you know what? Let's just have a few more. It will all be all right. Bug of a lot of them. Let's get plastered. But first, speaking of getting plastered. Just to mention, FPL meets on the final day of the season. We'll both be there at the Thirsty Bear Waterloo from 2:30 p.m. right through to the end next Sunday. That's the 25th of May. Kind of hosting it too, which may put off a lot of people. But hey, you know, we're all they could get. They scraped the barrel and found us there. The usual duo of the brilliant Dan FPL fella and Nima are unable to make it. So we've put our hands up and said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. Along with friend of the pod, James, as well. Do come along, watch us fail almost definitely on the final day to salvage some sort of modicum of respectability from this season. It should be a really great day out for all concerned. And there's money off as well, a discount on your drinks if you are with the FPL Meets crew, and discount on food as well. Had a couple of great ones in the past. We were talking just earlier on, weren't we, about the wild 4-4 between Liverpool and Saints a couple of years back on Roberto Firmino's final game. And also last year with me getting in the top 100k on the final day via a random Dallo goal really late on the day, which was just magical. I then proceeded to get too drunk and had to walk home via Subway and KFC because I was just that goddamn drunk. But anyway, always good. Always really good fun. And a couple of things, you know, if you're coming alone, do come and find us, and we'll kind of get you chatting and just obviously kind of introduce you to everybody. And yeah, it's really kind of collegiate, always great atmosphere, and it's always family friendly as well. So feel free to pop in if you're out and about anyway. More than welcome to come in and do that. And we'd love to see you. Yeah, I mean, it's always good fun, isn't it, Sam? That's how we met too.
It is how we met. That's exactly what I was about to say. It was a great first time there, and obviously we've both now been there for several attempts and several meets, but. That first one, you enter feeling a little bit nervous. You might not necessarily know anyone, but within like 2 minutes, you feel like you're right at home. So yeah, come alone. That's absolutely fine. You'll have friends within 5 minutes, no problem at all. That icebreaker of FPL is one of the best ones that there can possibly be. So yeah, met a lot of really good friends at meets over the last few years. And if you're listening and you haven't been there before, then I hope you become one of our friends in person in the next couple of weeks as well. I just noticed Claire in the chat as well saying, sadly, she can't make this one. She will be missed. Unfortunately, she has to suffer through a Southampton game against Arsenal for that one. So yeah, sorry about that, Claire, but you will be missed. And to any of you coming, give us a shout ahead of time and let us know when you're going to make it. And yeah, just come over to us and say hello, and we'll make you feel right at home. For now, though, Tom, shall we have a quick look at our Game Week 36 teams?
Oh, can we just talk about this for a while longer?
Can we be bothered?
Do we have to? Yeah, go on then. Yeah, you're back in the golden position of first up.
Yeah, it's fun being first. Yeah, 52 points for me. So about, again, basically just 2 grey hours in a row. I think I was down about 4 or 5k this week, but at this point in the season, that's just much ado about nothing. It doesn't really make a difference if I'm 314k or 309k or 300k. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, I did start by taking a little bit more of a swing this week. Took a -4 to bring in Bowen, as well as Wissa. Now Wissa, I did some pretty dramatic points dodging himself, only 1 point, and got the yellow cards. And Burmo captain for 12 points. I think we're just a little bit disappointed that wasn't a bit more in the Brentford game against Ipswich. Maybe a couple of penalty shouts in there. Did bring in Bowen, and he did all right. 8 points from him. I think the main talking point is probably the triple up of Palace, who performed superbly against Spurs. And if someone had told me or given me the XG data of from that game in advance, I would have happily played all 3 of them. It just didn't pan out that way. And it's been that way for quite a while now. The decision to go Sarr over Eze or Mateta over Eze has swung me 31 points in the wrong direction since the wild card. And that 31 points would be the difference between me sat at 300k and maybe just with an outside shout of top 100k going into game week 37, 38. So yeah, it's those minor things, those little decisions that do have kind of knock-on effects over a 6-7 game week period. Congratulations to Eze owners, you've smashed it. Sar's been putting up the data, just hasn't been getting the returns, and this game week 36 was probably a very good example of what's been going on in terms of points dodging for Sar, a little bit Mateta, and Munoz obviously did all right, but yeah, not enough to make it a green arrow. Slight red one. Missed out on Eze, missed out on Chris Wood as well. Those were probably the 2 main rank threats for me that did any sort of damage. Aston Villa a little bit as well, but nothing too dramatic. But yeah, just kind of a bit of a meh week for me. 52 points, not really going anywhere. Time to have some fun, possibly.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the play the season like you are going to play the end of the season like you're going to play next season. It may be starting to wear thin a little bit by the sounds of it. And yeah, it simply was one of those weeks. Honestly, it was a week where I had gains across the board for my team. When the game unlocked, I looked at live FPL. Said to you, Sam, I'm really looking forward to this week. I can make good decisions. Can't wait to see how I managed to get a red arrow out of this. And get a red arrow, I did. So I was so happy. Last week, I was so thinking, oh yeah, I'm up to 180k, 30 points up to 100k. I could do it. Just need a good week this week. I had no rank threats above 30%, and it was death by 1,000 cuts again. Marginal gain became marginal pain, as basically every player who was even like above 15% effective ownership against me returned. It was absolutely ridiculous. Whereas my guys,
nuts, wasn't it? Yeah,
bugger all. And I feel like that's happened so many times this season that I think the first few times I was a little bit more pissed off than I was on Sunday. I was kind of like, oh, whatever. So the transfers I made, I waited around for the City League. I did KDB and Evan Nilsson in for Palmer and Marmoush. Spoiler, one of those players has already left my team. And I later realised that this is why, that I could have done Watkins instead of Evan Nilsson. I could have afforded it. Another missed opportunity, and I felt gutted more about that on Sunday when I realised I could have done it than the result of this week in some ways. But I don't know, like, could I have sat there and thought about it a bit more? Well, I was out with the family, having a nice day out, and coolly, because I'm a cool man like this, I'm a sad man, asked my missus for 10 minutes on my phone, anticipating leaks. And yeah, the more I just kind of thought, right, okay, I'm having a picnic with my toddler. She's having a lovely time. I can't really be sitting there on my phone too long. So I made a split decision. And I suppose with Evan Nilsson, it was like the underlying data. We'll see that again in a minute. Was very good. And I kind of felt, you know what? Villa without Tielemans may kind of need to go for it. And that may really work well for them versus Bournemouth. As it was the other way around almost. Bournemouth were pretty rancid in that game. They get home to watch it. They were pretty anemic. There's kind of vibes of Forest about them, slightly out of gas. And Evan Nilsson, I think, had two attempts in the whole game. Neither of them were particularly good, whereas Watkins did the business. And yeah, I mean, was it 49 points down on the week where I really could have gone wild if things had gone my way, down to 200k, and I think it's just too far now, really, to get that top 100k. It'd be really nice to be in that position on the final day again, but I'm really looking for some sort of miracle, and I think that it's probably not going to be happening this year. But anything top 200k, I'll take 150k, something like that. Keith in the chat just said I didn't get the leak. Sounds like I dodged the bullet. Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of people kind of despairing about buying Kevin De Bruyne, for example, or buying Haaland. I mean, Southampton have ruined everybody's life this year in terms of fantasy football. So, that's a qualitative factor. But in reality, objectively, cold-eyed, was that ever a bad decision to own either of those players versus Southampton? Absolutely not.
No.
So it's one of those things that you just kind of have to suck up and move on and claim your bold claim point for, as we'll find out later on as well. Yeah. So yeah, as referenced, Sam and I both under the cabana. Our teams are ordering drinks and getting tucked in some margaritas and some Doritos while they wait out the rest of the season, effectively a little bit.
Sounds great.
Yeah. I'll look forward to joining them too, and maybe I'll go to Norway and play some Elite Serum, where I'm in the top 250 in the world at the moment.
Oh wow,
anyway, that's not here. That's not what we talk about
here. we need to change the topic of the pod. That is way more interesting.
Do an Elite Serum pod. I had a really good start. Anyway, this week, to move on to the main topic, we're moving best transfers up to the main topic, really, is to discuss some late punts you may want to take as you aim to bang or bust for the rest of the season. It's almost definitely too late for us, but we're hoping we'll be able to assist you, regardless of your situation, as we move into the final two. A very simple graphic today on screen, which we'll talk through for listeners, showing some selected teams, their final couple of fixtures, a selected player, and we'll obviously spoke about one or two more, their top 100k EO last game week, and finally the non-pen data over the last 6 weeks. I think last 6 weeks is absolutely fine to look at now. So Sam, we're very, very, very short term now. Before we sort of dive into this, I think we definitely have loads of questions flying around. Like I'm X points behind them. I'm in league. Can I get there? And I'm 20, 30 points behind target rank. Can I make it? And I've got to ask, outside of a kind of a Hail Mary captain, coming off. So say this week I just decided, screw it, I'm just going to captain Emil Smith-Rowe, and Emil Smith-Rowe goes off and scores a hat-trick. Outside of that sort of thing happening, what's attainable, do you think, really, within the next couple of weeks?
Yeah. I've been doing some thinking on this because I was looking at like previous rank swings over each given game week this season. I reckon you could probably get lucky to the extent, or get positive variance to the extent of probably 10 points a game week, and you'd say that's within the realms of possibility, outside of course, going crazy on the captaincy, chucking a couple of Hail Marys in there, which you can also do. So I think 20 points is attainable. I don't think you'd lose hope at that point. Maybe you would have to go a bit differential with certain decisions, but if you break it down into each week, 10 points a game week is effectively the difference between one player in your team massively hauling and your rival not hauling. Or if you're playing for rank, it's one differential doing well when one more popular player probably hasn't done well 2 weeks in a row. So not easy, but not impossible. Or it could be marginal gain. So maybe 3 or 4 players getting a couple extra points than the crowd do. So it's certainly possible at 20 points. I think when you're hitting 30 plus, you are going to have to get lucky with those and get a bit of positive variance, but then also maybe throw in 1 Hail Mary or possibly 2 Hail Marys, chuck in a bit of a rogue captaincy in there. And then again, I wouldn't lose hope at 30 points because it is still doable. And I've seen people grab that kind of swing in the last couple of game weeks before. If you look at last season, even as well, there were a load of people that got Eze last day for his, was it a 16, 17 point haul, something like that?
Mateta.
And Mateta. I think, but they both hauled on the same day.
Yeah, you're right.
Elise,
Yeah, they had a crazy day, didn't they?
Yeah, didn't they win 5-0 or something? And then Elise only got like an assist or something. And I was on Elise, of course, and everyone else was on Mateta and Eze, and they got that rank back in one day. So 30 points is attainable. I think there's probably a risk or two that needs to be taken. 20 points or under, I don't think you need to do anything extreme. I think you just tactically pick your battles and maybe go against the crowd in 1 or 2 places rather than just chucking Hail Marys all around the pitch and hoping that it all pays off, because the likelihood of all of those things paying off is quite low. And again, it will probably throw you further back than you want to. So yeah, I think 20 points to 30 points at a push.
Yeah, I think that's probably about the ceiling, isn't it? I think I made up something like that at the end of last year. And that was through literally things like that happening where I just got like tiny gains in different places. And, I kept certain few players. What was it the week before Palace had played West Ham? I don't know. I don't know.
It was recently before that, because I went to that game and I think it was 5-2 and like all of them hauled. Basically, it was an absolute goal fest. I don't think it was quite game week 37, but it might have been 35, 36. But yeah, very recent from it. Yeah,
something like that. But I do remember it all went kind of quite well for me at the very end. But yeah, I mean, you've got to be realistic, sadly, about what you can possibly do. Cool time of death a couple of weeks ago, there was like, I know, a little bip on the heart monitor a couple of weeks ago for me. But I feel like now it does feel like it's a tiny bit late. And I mean. If you really are kind of thinking, right, I want to just kind of go for broke, I mean, there's no better time to do it. Like, there's no time left, basically. And if you do have a strong feeling about a particular player in your mini league, if you've spotted that loads of people don't own a particular player or are going for one particular captain, and you kind of think, well, okay, I might as well take a chance on a different one, then this is the week to really go for it and be our guest to do so, really. And if you're consolidating as well, by the way, I think you're probably in a quite nice position, because apart from captain this week, there's probably going to be quite a predictable kind of set of players out there. And on that, here we are with our sort of ideas for potential kind of late boomer bust picks. I've got a feeling, Sam, that X motivation, we spoke about that a few weeks ago, or beachiness is key. And a really important kind of thing to note here is the temporal aspect, so timing. Because obviously there's the FA Cup final on Saturday. So Crystal Palace and Man City will have played a game by the time that we find out, but by the time they actually play in FPL terms in the Premier League. And by that time as well, there's one particular sort of impact that might be that if Palace win the Cup, Sam, it might knock out Brentford's interest in the remainder of the season, perhaps.
Yeah, that is possible. So basically, if Palace win the FA Cup, then it removes the, I think, Europa Conference League spot for the position in the league.
One, I think,
yeah. So therefore, that 8th spot is no longer interested in terms of trying to battle for Europe. So that could maybe add a bit of flavour to who's on the beach and who's not. So Brentford might be added to the pile of sunbathing, and I don't know what the closest beach is to London, but they might head on over there straight away.
I'm sure there's like a city beach somewhere.
Yeah, there must be something. So yeah. Anyway, they're always welcome down in Bournemouth. I was about to say Southampton. Don't go to a beach in Southampton. Yeah, always welcome down in Bournemouth. So yeah, Fulham and Wolves for them. 2 fixtures that you like the look of. They're not bad, but if they're on the beach, then maybe it weakens their appeal ever so slightly. So yeah, obviously contextual factors that we can't really account for at this point in time, because by the time we hit the deadline, we won't have had that fixture played. We won't have had the FA Cup final. So we don't know whether or not going into game week 38, they're going to be on the beach or not. So yeah, we can play the odds a little bit there. Obviously, Man City are favourites, but it's definitely not impossible that Palace win that game. So yeah, and by the time we get to game week 38, there might be an extra 2 or 3 teams that are also on the beach for different reasons. Maybe Champions League is secured for them, or maybe they've dropped out of the running for European football as well, or maybe they just can't move in position in the league whatsoever. Yeah. So there's not even that extra. Is it like 2.8 million prize money for each extra league position you jump up this year? So maybe they don't even have that. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of beachy teams next week. There's quite a few this week, but you've got to play what's in front of you, don't you?
Yeah, and that's hence why some of the focus is going to be very, very tight on, I think it's kind of 8 or 9 kind of team/players, really. I mean, there's maybe a couple that we'll come and say later on. That's a Brighton, for example, on the beach theme that maybe are worth a mention, but I think these are probably the ones that you're really realistically looking at players from. Yeah. I've ordered it by EO at 100k-ish, it's worth mentioning, by last week, which takes us to West Ham first, who've got Forest first, who obviously aren't on the beach. So they've got something to play for, especially with their owner marching onto the field to put a rocket up poor old Nuno, who had to kind of bat away questions like an MP apologising for something terrible.
Oh no, it was clearly just a discussion, Tom.
Yeah, it was a medical miscommunication, apparently.
Of course, that's why the owner went on the pitch.
Yeah, and obviously West Ham themselves are kind of no great shakes at the moment either. I think they're kind of mid-table for XG over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
However, West Ham over the next 2 do have Forest at home, Ipswich away, and Forest XGC, it'll be as a price to nobody, is in the bottom 4, just 0.5 of an XGC ahead of the mighty Saints, Sam. So
wow. We're tightening up.
So yeah, obviously we picked up Bowen here as a pick, and he's probably got kind of the highest effective ownership of them all with 32.8%. There are transfers in as well for him, but I think he's still kind of worth a mention. Maybe there is some juice, some to be gotten out of him, some gain to be had, but I don't know whether maybe the time has sort of gone for him. The only reason I put him in there actually is because someone at work today said, he's only 12.8%, 12.5% owned on the game. Like, he's not very particularly owned at all. I was kind of thinking, do I do the effective ownership thing now, or do I wait for next year? And I was thinking, I'm going to wait till next year. I said, yeah, probably worth a buy, because that's not a bad bit of kind of like, a bad bit of talk. I think Bowen's the only one, really. I think Kudus, who did get an assist this week, is definitely going to be a stretch too far, isn't he? But I think, Bowen, I don't know whether I'd be going there right now, but I suppose in the context of the other names we're going to be bringing up, he might just be quite a sound bet, especially with Ipswich and 38.
Yeah, I honestly actually still quite like him. You're right, the ownership is creeping up. I got plenty of benefit from having him this week, but I agree it will continue to rise, and that benefit will be tapered off a little bit by the time we get to game week 37 deadline. But I like the next 2 fixtures. Forest at home, final home game of the season for West Ham, and yeah, you've just mentioned the Forest drop off in the data, and then Ipswich in game week 38 is a great fixture too. So I think Bowen probably is not necessarily one of those like upside chasing picks anymore. It's more of a shield pick more than anything else. So if you're in a safer spot rank wise, or maybe you've got someone a few points ahead of you, let's say 5 to 10, and they've got Bowen, it might not be the worst idea just to make sure you're also getting Bowen's points in the next couple of weeks and attack somewhere else, because I do actually still think he's a very good bet over the next couple of weeks. I think he'll score well. And I don't think there are tons of other midfielders around his price point that I'd confidently predict to beat him. So although it's not an aggressive play, and it's not one that was going to climb you the ranks or climb you in the mini leagues necessarily, it might just be that hygiene pick just to make sure that you've got it covered off, because I do expect him to still do pretty well, if a little bit boring.
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean. I think there is one player who plays for Arsenal who's not Saka, who is in the price bracket that I would essentially highlight. So
yeah,
Newcastle and Southampton left for us. Saka's obviously kind of the top billing. Martinelli, I think, is a really interesting sort of pick. Just to highlight here, just because one, as James also noted this on Planet FPL, really interesting sort of interplay between him and Trossard. Lots of kind of what we saw of Gabriel Jesus, they finally feel like it's clicked for both of them in terms of swapping over in terms of who goes on the wing, who goes up front. Seems to have found the shooting boots again, which is pretty good. Not really anywhere in the underlying data, though. I mean, top page accounts for anything. But he and Trossard indeed both really kind of hyper differentials, uber differentials that I think could be quite interesting. It does stand to reason that the game against Newcastle might have, I mean, barring a statistical miracle, there's no way Arsenal are going to drop out the top 5. But
yeah,
there's still going to be, I don't know whether we're going to read the tea leaves. I think there's going to be some motivation to get second, but I do think Martinelli is a fairly interesting pickup actually towards the end of the season for the last couple of games. If you're fishing in that Bowen pond, especially because you've got the Southampton game at the very end of the season, albeit I don't know whether the Southampton game is going to go the way we kind of all want it to go. Could be that 4-4 though, Sam. Yet again, Arsenal, just for reference, over the last 5 game weeks are 5th overall for XG, so ticking up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Southampton ever scoring 4 in a game, so unlikely. I also think that there's a bit of logic to the fact that we now do have the 12 points. Are we going to loosen up a little bit and take our eye off the ball even more so? So I'm obviously encouraged by recent performances a little bit. It has been a bit better and a bit tighter at the back than it was, but it's still not AC Milan prime. It's nothing crazy. So I can still see Martinelli, Trossard, Marino. I think he's back for game week 38, right? Could all be decent one week punts in game week 38. Not sure about buying them this week though, I have to say. I think out of the 2 that we've suggested so far, I'd probably still be swinging towards Bowen if I was to buy now. If you can roll the transfer, I would then probably move across to Martinelli or Trossard potentially instead. But this week, I don't love the Newcastle fixture. They feel fired up at the moment, and they are now also gunning for that second spot. So that is going to be a really hotly contested match, and there's a bit of a bitterness between the 2 teams now as well. So I wonder. I just feel like that one's quite a tough one to call.
Yeah, I think it could be one of those games that either is very tense and tight, or if there's an early goal, could get really, really interesting indeed. Like, I've got no issues, for example. I know a lot of people have to go, and we'll talk about it later, from if they want Watkins they need to get there from Isaac. I've got them both, and I've never really had any sort of thought to sell Isaac, although again we'll talk about it later, but there are some rumours buzzing around about him as well. But yeah, I do think that game's actually could potentially be a really interesting one. I do quite like Martinelli. Tommy's just said in the chat about him as a 38 kind of pickup, and he might be one of those players that I do just think, screw it, everyone's gonna go Saka, I'm gonna just zag and see what happens on the final day, and that could be an interesting one to do. One of those who could well have made my my list of trolls, actually, Sam, as an impotent troll when the when the fixtures were really good last year. When I bought him over Saka, no reminder needed there. Villa up next with my friend has said earlier on, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Clown FC ×2 for the final 2 for Villa. It was Spurs at home, United away. Watkins obviously top of the billing, 7.44% effective ownership, top 100k last game week. That's going to be nowhere near true next week, but I don't know. I don't know whether he's still. I don't think the volume at the moment is high enough to see him get above 100%. So he's still going to be a good captain for you. Yeah, I think that spoiler. I think he probably will be one of the best captains next week. Underlying data isn't really up to very much, but lots of things have happened there. So he's a good kind of sword pick, I think, still, Sam. And Rodgers obviously is kind of the shield pitch. Rodgers loves a through ball is one of my eye test points, and I was glad to see that I think Scout picked that up as well in one of our articles today. Many years pressing triangle on FIFA/FC, I think, for Rodgers has cultivated his love of a through ball, and I used to love doing that as well. Love through ball, especially when that was good.
Big fan.
So I think it's fairly logical if you can get there, or indeed most people always seems to own Rodgers all year whenever he scored points, and damn my rant to a red arrow. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think you've summarized it perfectly with sword and shield there. I think with Watkins, that ownership is going to look a lot beefier come game week 37. I do wonder what it's going to get up to. It does seem like there is a lot of traffic heading his way, but Yeah, if he can be somewhere around 70-80% EO, including the captaincy obviously weighed into that, that still feels differential enough for me as a captaincy shout to be punt worthy. If you are just looking at buying him and not captaining him in either of these 2 weeks, then I'd say that possibly it's not aggressive enough if you are chasing. But if you are convinced that he is the captain for you, then I think he's worth a buy. If you don't think he's the captain for you, then I would just ask, okay, well, what's 20% of a player in that case if he is around 80% effective ownership, when there are a few other strikers that we'll come on to later that you could do a 1 weeker on with some good fixtures this week, and then move across to someone like an Evanilson, for example, against Leicester in game week 38. So I do like Watkins, but I think the main decision that you have to kind of fixate upon is whether or not he's your captain this week. If he's your preferred captain, then I think he is a great punt. If he's not, then he probably falls into the hygiene pick category with Rodgers, because the ownership is going to be probably north of 50% and somewhere just south of 100, I would guess. But I'm interested in both. I have a spot ready for both of them that are currently occupied by Crystal Palace players who I have significant expected minutes doubts, which we'll come on to later. And yeah, Watkins, if I do want to captain him, then yeah, he makes sense to me as an aggressive play. I do like it.
And Rodgers, then Sam, non-owners, I think, in the Shields sort of vein. I mean, if you do buy him, you're probably just going to keep him, aren't you, for both these games?
Yeah.
A player who's got me quaking in my figurative FPL boots. Both kind of mentioned this, and maybe we'll talk about it later on. It's kind of, especially for us with 1 free transfer left, it's really weighing up whether he's worth a hit to bring in just to cover it off.
Yeah.
But I suspect many are going to be looking at buying him in just for context. Watkins is the runaway leader in terms of transfers. It's 170, 180,000 transfers in. Rodgers on the 50k, but still kind of really decent effective ownership last week.
All I would add to the Villa thing is, should we do a rewind to a pod a few game weeks ago and ask ourselves, is it time to buy Asensio? Since Ramsey's suspended, it looks like his minutes should be a little bit more secure going into game week 37. Could be on penalties. If you are really going for a punt over Rodgers, his data is good. I don't want to just be tied down to, he once scorned me, so I'm not ever going to recommend him again. But yeah, I mean, there's already chat in the comments saying, yeah, shudders. So I'm not sure I can do that. But yeah, just want to monitor, I suppose.
Yeah, he's on penalties.
Was on penalties. If I was Emery, he wouldn't be on penalties anymore.
No. I wonder if they'll take up the option on him. We've got to look at him again next year. That's going to be, got to wipe the slate clean at the start of every year, don't we? And just forget about it. But hey, I think that's probably too rich for my blood. But yeah,
same. Yeah,
right.
I can't do it myself.
A nice sword versus shield thing there. Brentford wise, Fulham and Wolves, the last two. Sade's obviously the name that kind of pops out. The third Brentford player over 10 goals for the season. 5.4% effective ownership last game. We've got a 10-pointer. And third overall of the players we're looking at, Saka's first, Evanilson's first, as well, a minute. Saka second, and Sade in third, 2.47 x non-pen SGI over the last 6. Next 2 games, I'm be thinking, that's pretty tough, or relatively tough. Fulham, a big rivalry there between Fulham and Brentford, actually. 4th from bottom for XGC over the last 6, though. So still decent defence, really. And overall, actually, I was surprised to see they're third overall all season for defensive data. So done really well. And Marco Silva burnished his reputation even more this year. Shame not going to get into Europe probably. See him at Spurs, maybe. Don't know. We shall see. But they've lost the last 2, and kind of wonder whether they are on the beach. And same with Wolves on the final day. Are they done for the season? Mid-table for XGC, but lost 2 in a row as well. As I mentioned, kind of a couple of weeks ago, we did the on the beach thing. They just come off that kind of 6-game winning streak, but it kind of, to me, felt a bit like, and I think you agreed as well, that then maybe they could just be like, right, okay, job's done here, and we're staying up, but there's nothing else to really play for this year. And it sounds like, from Pereira's comments that Cunha, who went off with 0 points on the 59th minute, to really kind of get FPL General excited. It sounds like there's a debate whether he or Guedes actually starts the next couple of games, and I wouldn't be surprised if Pereira doesn't start Cunha, to be honest, because he's not going to be here next year, and there's no real sort of impetus apart from 1.8 million per place for him to be kind of playing. So, yeah, I mean, I think the fixtures do look kind of all right. Taking the sword first, Sam Sade. I just feel like most people are gonna have both Visser and Eze. So, Visser and Bumo. So, don't know whether adding a third at this juncture is the time to do it. Maybe if you don't own Visser, look at Sade, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. And it would be an aggressive play to own all three potentially and triple up on the Brentford attack. I'm just not convinced that the fixtures are good enough to go that hard on it. Like, I don't mind the double up. I don't love it for the last two fixtures. I preferred looking at the set of 3 or 4 going into game week 35, 36. Now it's kind of like, they're fine. They're not worth selling. Fulham and Wolves are like decent fixtures, but they're not headline fixtures. Whereas if you're buying a player now, you're looking for upside, you want a couple of things. Well, you want 3 things really. You want good underlying expected data, you want minutes, and you want fixtures. And Sharda probably has one of those, maybe 2 if you're generous on the fixtures, but his data's not bad. His expected minutes is iffy, 70-ish a week, maybe 75. And then the fixtures are iffy, the data's iffy. Basically, it's all fairly iffy. The price point makes it tempting, and obviously the ownership is good as well. But I think the time to buy him, for me at least, was probably looking back last week or the week before. Whereas now, again, we're going to come on to these teams in a moment, but I think there are teams with players around his sort of price point that I'd maybe be focusing on beforehand if I was looking at the fixtures and looking for a very low ownership, high upside pick.
For sure. And Sade is just sharding it for transfers in over Visser, kind of 52k over 49k. But proper shield picks, Visser and Bumo. It's one of those things I kind of can't imagine you'd be going there now. Visser last week was, I think, 54% EO from memory in the top 100k. Still maybe a differential a bit further down, but I'd imagine most people have kind of already gone there if they're going to go. So in some ways, I don't know whether you still put them up as shield picks or whether you'd be looking at them as kind of like players to take on almost a little bit. And I think I'd be in that category really at this point. We're given the fixtures being good, but middling.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. If you don't have them already, then you've kind of given yourself that like little edge if you're chasing by not having them. They're good players. I expect them to do well, but it's not completely bonkers to think that they might have a couple of blanks in a row. It could happen. They're not easy fixtures. So yeah, with that in mind, if you're chasing and you don't already have them, I would use that as an opportunity to look elsewhere. If you've got them already, then I've said the word a few times already, but they're kind of hygiene picks at this point. They're already there. I wouldn't say they're immediate sells. I will probably end up holding on to both of them for the rest of the season. But if you see massive upside and you're really convinced in another route, another player, then I don't think you have to hold on to them at this point. But yeah, certainly if you're defending rank, then they're your kind of bread and butter to have at the moment. They're decent enough fixture, very good online data. There's no logical reason to sell them other than I'm chasing and they're going to be high owned. And I feel like there could be an opportunity there. So yeah, I'd agree with everything you said there, basically.
I've definitely been in a position in the past where I've just kind of looked at where I am. So I'm leading my mini league by 10 points. And I see that, second, third and fourth behind me have all got Visser. I'm like, well, okay, I've got a player to get rid of this week. I've got a forward to get rid of this week. Well, actually, maybe logic takes, I just cover that off. That's absolutely fine if that's kind of the way you go. If you're looking at it from an overall rank point of view and you want to kind of go on the offensive, then that's kind of where you might consider actually maybe I go elsewhere. But one player you won't be buying is Nicholas Jackson, who got himself sent off rather stupidly for Chelsea. He's also going to miss game week 1 next year for them too. And I think that even though, yes, okay, he's not the most prolific goal scorer in of himself, him being sent off actually did kind of turn the kind of my opinion really on whether I was going to have FOMO about Palmer or not next week. Because obviously they've got Man United up next and then Forest at the end. Palmer, I think, is the only Chelsea player. You'll notice we're not talking about defenders here, and I just think that that's kind of rooted in the fact that unless you've got loads of transfers, buying defenders at this point in the season just feels like a complete waste of time. So I think we're just kind of giving short shrift to all defenders, which means that for Chelsea, I don't think that anybody outside of Palmer is really worth your thinking right now. 5% effective ownership, top 100k last game, which is absolutely wild, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, when it comes to Palmer and how we started the season and what our thoughts were for him, although some people were thinking that Nkunku would be the best thing since sliced bread. But yeah, I just feel it's Palmer or bust for them, and I think that I'm just going to swerve it, to be honest, Sam.
I'm still tempted on Palmer because, again, I've got nothing to lose really. So it comes down to my diagnosis of whether Liverpool truly are so beached right now that Salah is incapable of scoring points, which I don't think is correct. But I could envisage a world where I bring in both Palmer and Watkins and just go like, again, Hail Mary. And having Palmer instead of a Salah, for instance, obviously, if you can have both, great. And I know you're in a position where you could potentially. But if you go Salah to Palmer, then I think, again, it makes it easier to then go to Saka the following week. Whereas if you stick with Salah now, I think it's very difficult. And I can picture myself going into game week 38 thinking, I don't think I can get on board with removing Salah for Saka. If you've got another route there, like you do, Tom, then obviously that's not a problem. But there are those of us out there with either lesser team value or just the structure right now that means that it is Salah versus Palmer versus Saka. So I don't mind that as a route. I don't love it as much now that Jackson's out. Couple of mentions though. Sancho won't be allowed to play against Man United. Jackson is obviously suspended. So I think it's very likely that Neto plays out of position up top. Possibly George. That's not out of the realms of possibility. But Neto could be out of position. So I don't mind that. Enzo's just been mentioned in the chat as well. And I do quite like that. And then possibly you could look at Madueke as well. Like obviously with those suspensions, with those cup ties, I suppose you can't play your parent club. He might be in line for a start too. So I think there are punts there potentially at Chelsea, but none of the punts are going to have the upside that Palmer has. So if you're going with anyone, I think Palmer's probably the guy if you can get there. So I'm at least open to it. Again, if for fun, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's all fun, isn't it? And Bournemouth as well are kind of all fun too. So Man City away next, but is it going to be a drunk City? Oh, we don't know. That's the game on the Tuesday. But Leicester at home, game week 38 is the big carrot. Evan Nilsson top for non-pen XGI for the last 6 of the players we're looking at here. Tiny effective ownership last game. The only thing, and this is, I went ahead and bought him for what looked like a really kind of interesting game for the way Bournemouth have been playing the season on paper. The only thing I would say is that they did look particularly rancid this week. As I said earlier on at the start, they looked absolutely, and Paul just said it in the chat as well, absolutely spent against Villa. I think they're completely out of gas. But it's Leicester, you said to me earlier on today, Sam, in game week 38. Maybe one to keep an eye on this week. Him, the mids, they're all cheap enough to play a role and are easy to get to for game week 38. But it feels like this week it's kind of one that you kind of give it a miss now, just because there are other options on the table, especially I think the 2 Villa players, Bowen, these are all players that you're probably going to be prioritizing ahead of buying one of these players in slightly early.
Yeah, completely agreed. I think with Bournemouth in mind, there are enough good fixtures on the table this week for other clubs that you're probably not prioritising them. I definitely wouldn't be selling these players now. But yeah, next week is when they're most interesting at home to Leicester. And I wouldn't necessarily let recent performances put you off too much by game week 38. Again, final home game of the season against a relegated Leicester side. It will be open. Both teams will be ex-beachy. And of course it's down at Bournemouth, so they can literally walk out of the stadium and go and chill on the beach afterwards. So yeah, I do like it as a game week 38 punt. I wouldn't let recent performances put me off too much. That being said, not this week for me.
This week maybe though for Everton. So last home game at the Goodison Park in the Premier League, X narrative, riding high. Newcastle game at 38. So it really is a 1 week punt for your Everton player. They're all cheap enough that you can bin them off or put them or hide them on the bench. David in the chat, is this the week to captain DCL with his triumphant return on the Goodison final day?
Is DCL fit?
I don't know. I without looking
now.
But maybe Beto. I would have said McNeil, but he didn't start the last game. I've come back in the team. Who knows? The Duke Decore, always good for a goal in one of these games. As in Dye, who's out of position on the wing.
Alcaraz against former club.
Yeah, Southampton player, former club narrative, Goose narrative. I mean, that's just something that I wouldn't say no to any of these players. In my I've got I play an offshoot of FPL. My daughter runs the team. If anyone's listening from official channels, hi Mark Sarvins. But my daughter runs the team. But the team that she runs has triple captain left in the 30 million in the bank league, and I have a triple captain on Beto this week, for example. I'm leaning into the X narrative, but it really is if you've got transfers to burn, or you just think, I'm going to chain on different move, or you don't want to play another midfielders this week. You want to bench them like a Murphy or something. You want to bench them this week. You've got a striker. You want to move on. Play Murphy next week against Everton. Then this is the week to just go for it with a Beto or something like that. I think, but I mean, it's very sort of marginal sort of things. Same with Ipswich and same with Leicester, who we've got on the list here, right, Sam? With the likes of Delap and Vardy at Leicester as well. Another X narrative as well for Leicester. Vardy looking for his 200th goal. So yeah, those teams, I suppose, when you're really kind of going for it in terms of the proper uber differentials, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of these players are massive rank gainers if you can pick them correctly. And I don't actually have Beto that far behind Watkins this week, honestly. I don't think it's that crazy of punts. And the same would go for Delap, except the minutes have really dropped off recently. I think they know that he's off in the summer. Obviously, the relegation release clause is now active. He's in advanced discussions with Man United, as far as we know from the media today. So I think that kind of continues. And I don't know if you remember this, Tom, but like about game week 30, I think I was mentioning that Delap was the player I had my eye on for the last few game weeks of the season. I like their fixtures, and I really like him as a player as well. I'm very hot on him. I think he's a very, very talented young forward. So I would like to have had him as a bit of a differential. However, the minutes just aren't there, and Ipswich have kind of sunk like a stone recently. I like the Leicester game. The West Ham game's not bad, so it's a good combo, but the minutes just aren't good enough for me now. And Ciso possibly as an Uber differential in the midfield. I don't absolutely hate it if you've got maybe Jacob Murphy and you don't like the minutes there. And
him and El Canouse, isn't it? If you're looking in that fishing in that pond.
Yeah, if you're looking for normally completely rubbish FPL picks that might have 1 or 2 weeks left in them before becoming championship players, Enciso and El Canouse both are pretty decent players and possibly playing up for a move a little bit at the moment. And Ciso in particular looked proper fired up in the most recent match. So he's still playing for the shirt at least. So they're against each other. So they're effectively both playing against a team at their own level. So
championship next year, isn't it?
Exactly.
Championship game.
It's what would you imagine a Delap and Enciso and El Canouse, all of these players, to do against a team at their level in the championship next season over a 46 game week period? You'd expect them to do pretty well. So you don't hate them as 1 week punts this week, but it might give you an issue going into next week. And I think because Beto's there at 4.8, is it? I think he probably beats the rest, unless you really like the narrative on Vardy. And honestly, I don't hate that either. It's a good home fixture. You won't want to play him game week 38, but if you don't have to, or if you're moving across to an Evan Nilsson next week, then I actually do really like Vardy as well. So Watkins, Beto, Vardy are probably the 3 forwards I'd prioritize this week.
Yep. Quick note that Beto is the 3rd most transferred in player this week.
Is he? Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, 50,000 transfers in for better. Obviously,
Maybe
it's
not so differential.
almost 60,000 goal. He's still going to be a
Yeah.
massive differential. But
Yeah.
yeah, 2 goals and 2 for Big Beto.
He's quite
Yeah,
streaky as well.
he is. He's got. Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely fine. Hence why I'm triple captioning. I just don't think it's worth the transfer for me, given the front three that I've got. But you know, if you're in a different position, absolutely fire away. I've got no problems with any of those players. Tons of others that we're going to speak about: Man City and Crystal Palace in just a little bit. I know a couple of people have asked about Eze and things like that. Definitely talk about that in a minute. Yeah, the only other team I'd add to this, maybe Brighton, Liverpool at home and Spurs away. Liverpool literally on the beach, and Spurs away, either going to be drunk or very sad for that final game of the season. I was just thinking, well, you know, if Matoma's fit, he hasn't been fit recently, he's still got an ongoing problem versus that problematic right back spot for Liverpool. Your man Minte is always a potential pickup, but to be fair with them, I think, you know, the minutes probably scare you off, and rightly so as well, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed. There's just too much happen again because they've not got much to play for now. Realistically, they're probably going to be trialing a few different systems and a few different players in different positions. So picking, obviously 11 players have to start, so you could get lucky and get the right ones in, but there's enough risk there that I would be a little bit worried about what the systems are going to look like and what they're really playing for and motivated by. Quick question though, Tom, because I genuinely don't know this. When's João Pedro back? Is he back in the side now, or
I think he's back this week.
Is he? Don't hate that. Don't hate that. Penalties usually 90 minutes, and he loves a big game against Liverpool. There for the taking. Yeah, don't mind it. Just an interesting one.
Troll of the season for loads of people. Those people have just recalled in the same way we recalled Asensio by you mentioning the name of João Pedro. One that probably most people won't forget until next year. But I don't mind that at all.
It'd be classic troll to do it in a week when no one owns him.
Yeah, that's only going to burnish his reputation even further. So maybe it's time to do it. All right, we've got a lot more mileage out of that than I thought we would. But onto the game week preview even further. So transfers already been taken care of, but we will do AOB, knee-jerk on Salah, bold claims, points scored, and best captain for this week. So knee-jerk. Salah out if you really fancy Palmer, especially. I think is probably the main sort of pivot point for this week. If Jackson didn't get suspended, I think that there'd be a lot of people looking at Salah and thinking, right, you're out, Palmer in. As it is, my feeling is that I don't think people are going to be looking at it that much. Captainable on the final day versus Palace at home, maybe. Former co-host of WGTA, some bloke called Harry, I think his name is Harry FPL Harry, I don't know. Harry Daniels, I think his name is, and he was on some pod called the FPL Pod, saying that Salah is perhaps more interested in the assist record than the goal one now, which may dampen some enthusiasm for him. And I just feel like there's. We often say there's no room at the inn in terms of transfers in. I feel like there's no bandwidth really for transfers out for Salah at this late juncture of the season almost. Like I'm kind of keeping him just because I'm keeping him, if that makes sense, because I've got other things I want to be doing. If I had 3 or 4 transfers, then maybe I would look at kind of removing Salah and kind of working it around. Like if I was on free hit this week, then I certainly would not have Salah for this particular game week, almost definitely. But, you know, who knows which Brighton's going to show up and who knows what Liverpool are going to show up, really. So it's a tough one. It just feels like unless there was a really kind of obvious option with which to replace Salah in the guise of Cole Palmer, I could do it. I've got a KDB, so that doesn't really apply to me. But if that was the case for a lot of people, then I suspect that might be what would happen. But I just don't really see it happening, really, Sam. I feel like Salah just kind of stays there, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think for free, I can get on board with it. If you want to go aggressive, if you're chasing, I think one of the ultimate players to take on now, if you're 20, 30 points back, I would at least consider the idea that maybe Liverpool just stay on the beach and Salah just continues this little bit of a cold spell for him. Obviously, he's still Salah. He can return any game week. There's always loads and loads of danger there. But if you're chasing, it's kind of now or never. And the biggest upside you're going to get is in that position. Palmer is, with a lot of the algorithms and all of that stuff, if you even listen to it, is expected to do very well this week. And it's obviously, you know, anecdotally a very good fixture, followed by Saka the next. If you've got the transfers, if you want to go aggressive, if you're chasing, I wouldn't discount it. I don't think it's mad to do it. It's the second it's then for a hit that for me, I just don't see too many scenarios that pays off. Salah against Brighton, I've got very fond memories of Salah against Brighton. I think we both captained him a couple of years ago when everyone went another way, and he did really well in that one. Not that should really weigh into our thinking, but Brighton are there to be gotten at. There's no question about that. And then Palace will be definition of beach on game week 38. If they win the FA Cup, they'll barely even put out a team. They'll be so drunk. There's just no point. And then if they lose, then they're not fighting for anything in the league, and there could arguably be a bit of rotation, or they'll just be, sad, like you said about Spurs as well. So I do like those two fixtures. The only way I would even consider it is in this exact scenario where you're chasing and you need to do something, and everywhere else you just don't see an edge big enough. Whereas if it's an edge that you take on captaincy, like Palmer, like Saka over the next two, there are scenarios in which you do beat a large chunk of the crowd because Salah's ownership will remain high. That's a very long-winded way of saying I don't advise it, but it could work out, and therefore I would at least leave yourself open to the possibility that if you're chasing, if you do need a big last-minute Hail Mary, then that is the ultimate one to go for, because not many people are going to be selling him. Not many people are going to be captaining Palmer. It's not a horrendous decision. I don't know if I'm brave enough, stupid enough, whatever you want to call it, to do it, but I would leave yourself open to that thinking.
Yeah, certainly. All right. So any other business with transfers, what to do with Crystal Palace and Man City, and also assistant manager, and just to give a bit of voice to that one. I think with City and Palace, obviously it's a bit of a strange situation because, as I said earlier on, their game falls after another game and the FA Cup final. And then I think a lot of things are going to be impacted by that to some extent. I think, Sam, maybe it falls into positional categories almost. With the forwards, Marmoush and Mateta, who are on the YouTube screen, I think they both are sellers. With De Bruyne, with likes of Saar, with Eze, definitely. Eze is the second most bought in player this week, actually. De Bruyne has got the final game X narrative. Saar maybe make weight for other moves. Definitely Eze and KDB I'd keep. Saar would be one that I'd be maybe wavering on if I had something else I might want to do, such as Morgan Rogers if I'm shielding myself. And then in defence, Munoz, Guardiola, anyone else you might own, like a Henderson, is just almost definitely a keep and probably play, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, that basically kind of means that Marmoush, Mateta, and maybe Saar would be the ones I'd be thinking about getting rid of. I think KDB, Eze, I probably and defenders, I'd be keeping them, hoping they avoid injury on Saturday, and then just whatever happens on Tuesday with those players. I mean, KDB could again be one of those players who are in that sort of Salah category, Sam, as a player that you might want to get rid of if you have a really strong feeling about Palmer. So you've got Watkins already, you don't fancy Watkins, you want to kind of go for Palmer this week for your captaincy. But yeah, Marmoush, Mateta do feel like the sells to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd actually probably just about add KDB. I think there's enough other good options I like out there around his price that I'd probably consider him a potential sell this week. I think the minutes are risky enough. I think he will probably start against Bournemouth because it is that final home game, but there's a risk there. And there's also a risk that he comes off early to a round of applause, having just played the FA Cup final as well a few days previous. So yeah, I think KDB, when you look at what Palmer could do, and the fixture, and then obviously Saka onto Saka the following week. Maybe not for a hit, but I wouldn't mind it as a sell. I think there's enough doubt there that I'd be a little bit worried. More worried with Mateta by a long way. I think he's the certain sell for me because he's getting poor minutes even without an FA Cup final before the next game. So he's a sell. Marmoush, I think he's probably a sell as well, but maybe not quite as strong as Mateta. I think because everyone sold Marmoush, he's now a differential in of himself, and they're not terrible fixtures for the last two. So if you think he starts, I don't hate keeping him, especially because he came on and he nearly won the game for City, and Pep is trying to find a way to get them all into the starting lineup. But I think there are enough good forwards out there that they're both sells, to be quite frank. I think you could hold on to Marmoush if you really wanted to, but I think they're both easy enough sells. Eze, I'd probably keep. Saar is the one that I'm really 50-50 on. Like you said, I don't think I can sell Munoz or Gvardiol. Saar, I could see it either way. He might not start. I would actually probably guess that one of Saar or Mateta starts, and whichever one doesn't, Nketiah starts in that position. And I just don't. I don't know which one it'll be. So I think I'm leaning towards it being Mateta being the more of a problem, because I've also got an easier solution for Mateta. But I can see a world where Saar's the one that gets benched, and that could be a bit painful as well. So yeah, I might be backed into a bit of a corner and hit and take a -4 to get rid of both of them. But if I was to keep one of them, it'd probably be Saar at this point.
Yeah, Saar's actually the biggest underperformer of all the entire league over the last 6 game weeks.
That sounds about right.
2 fewer goals than should have scored. Your expected rank is definitely suffering there, Sam, because of that. -1.99. Saka, for reference, is the top underperformer overall for non-pen XGI. 3.11 fewer returns than should have had over the last few weeks. I wonder if
the offside goal as well.
Yeah, I wonder if that includes certain someone's triple captain. It might do, to be fair. In fact, it definitely does if in that second game. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. Really, it feels just the time to. Mateta has to go. Marmoush, I don't know. You're I think you're differential of the stealth stuff. He's also underperforming. I just kind of feel like there's enough. Like Marmoush to Watkins isn't that too far of a jump.
I think for free that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Assistant manager, just to kind of cover that off. The main table bonuses this week are quite good ones actually. Hertzler, home versus Liverpool, and Potter at home versus Forest. Both of them, I think, are really interesting pickups. If you're looking to go for broke, effectively with your assistant manager, which I wouldn't blame you for right now, you're probably not going to be in any worries in terms of tripling up on a particular team. And I think that those could be the ones that could end you up with a flourish. Rob TFPL on X and Blue Sky projects sort of 37% for a Brighton win and a 35% chance of a West Ham win. And given the travails of Liverpool and Forest at this point in the season, I think that's absolutely fine if that's where you want to go. I know a lot of people did go for Pep for last week, and they're projected to win 63% against a listless Bournemouth, to be honest. So I wouldn't kind of say no if you had Pep and you just left it on Pep, to be honest. But I think Hertzler or Potter are definitely worth a look if you're kind of gunning for table bonus.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I don't think a move away from Pep's worth a transfer, unless you're really, really chasing. I'd probably just keep it on him for the rest of the season now, to be honest, because transfers are really precious, and I think we can probably eke out considerable upsides in the player base. Whereas I don't know Pep to any other manager right now. There's a strong enough chance that they hit a table bonus that it makes the upside worthwhile. So I'd probably just leave it on Pep if you've already got it there. But yeah, objectively, I do like Hertzler this week. I think there's a decent chance at least that they pull off something against Liverpool. Don't hate Potter either, but I would probably slightly veer towards Hertzler if I was going in fresh, which you shouldn't be because it's game week 37 and you should have it active by now.
Yeah. And Godspeed if you are activating it now. I hope that game week 39 assistant manager is going to do wonders for you. Yeah, I mean things happen. You could have forgotten deadline or whatever. And things happen. And obviously I've got many sympathies for you. Bold claims this week. Speaking of sympathies, yes. So the happiness hedge has come in. We're at the hit rate of 22% now, Sam. 8 points scored in 2 of us. It's now 5-3 to me. 2 weeks to go. You're looking at a draw, a 0-0 victory to claim victory this season. If not, it's going to be 2-0 for me over the last couple of years. But yeah, KDB and Marmoush, the blank versus Saints, one that I came up with probably about 5 minutes before we started the podcast, has come in, which is to my chagrin. Obviously, I did sell Marmoush at the last minute. Did buy KDB though for his 3-point haul, as Dan in the chat has just called it. And yeah. I know. I was very happy for Saints to secure that 0-0 victory, to be honest. And I thought that Ruben Diaz afterwards was frankly embarrassing because it's just, what else are you going to do? Frankly, yeah, just roll over, go toe to toe with us, and lose 6-0. Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely what teams should do against you, then, Ruben. Dear me.
Yeah. Well, you hear that a few times a season, don't you? Let's face it, where there's a much superior team that get frustrated with a team who have to low block to even have a hope of getting a result, and they find it tough to break them down. And look, that's a part of football. Like, that you are going to have a lesser team that low blocks you and tries to keep it tight, and it's down to you to find a solution. And Man City are a fantastic team, but on the day they didn't quite find a solution, and I get why that's frustrating, but sorry, mate, that's part of it. That's kind of the game you play. So I don't know what you expected. We were on 11 points. Like, we're not going to come at you. Sorry, Ruben.
So
no
we
hard
had it this year with the 2-2 really long when Trossard got sent off in the first half. And I mean, obviously they're kind of, tribalistically defending their own team, but last minute John Stones equalised. Oh yeah, football won, etc., and we'd spent the second half of the game heroically defending. It was kind of like, well, what else do you expect us to do? Like, we're out and played anti-football. Well, of course we did. We had 10 players against one of the best teams in the world. Hey, anyway, enough about that. Didn't quite work out for you, but it was really close, wasn't it?
It was. I was getting my hopes up for a bit. I went with another combination, a bit like you. So I went for no Forest clean sheet, which got wiped out very quickly, and then also Wood to blank. Now, Wood actually did score a goal, so unfortunately that combination did not come through, leaving me with it all to do in the final couple of weeks to draw level with you. I cannot beat you, other than maybe in season bowl claims, and I'm pretty sure 2 of them definitely won't come in. I can't remember what my third one is. So
I think that's 1, isn't it? Because I got a BALD manager to lose his job first. And I
So that's looking unlikely, but all a bit of fun. So we'll go again this week, and I am kind of doing a bit like what I did this week and what you did last week as well, actually. And I'm going for Watkins and Rodgers, obviously both being very popular buys this week, to both blank against Spurs. I'm not sure quite how they'll manage to do that, but we've just seen that with KDB and Marmoush, so it's possible. That's what I'm going with: Watkins and Rodgers to blank.
Man, I mean, I've got Watkins in spoiler, and I've got him captain, so we know what's going to happen there. It's going to be Asensio brace, 2 penalties, of course, both assisted by McGinn. That is dyed in the wool. Absolutely going to happen now. Dear, I've gone for no clean sheets this week. I think that's a pretty standard one, but I think that's a possible one, given where we are in the season and the lack of motivation wherever we fish around. This week, in terms of best captain, I feel like it's Watkins versus Palmer if we're kind of just talking about objectively. When we start to figure in exactly how you get to these guys, if you've got a route to get to them. I know Sam, you'll give voice to this in a minute, because I know that's something that you're thinking about. That's when it starts to get a bit more complicated. And I was thinking that initially what I said last week, you suggested it, and I was just like, that's kind of what I was thinking of doing as well, was the kind of Palmer to KDB, back to Palmer for captaincy sort of thing. And rightly or wrongly, I just kind of remember what happened when Chelsea were down to Jackson, and I just kind of think I don't know, it just feels like they don't function in the same way with Neto out of position or Nkunku or something like that. So I'm kind of less worried, even though Man United are going to be the same as Spurs in terms of having absolutely zero interest in that game. But I could get to Watkins. I have bought Watkins, and I think he will probably be my captain. I'm hoping for a 24-point haul or whatever it was that he got a couple of years ago. So I don't know. I think on paper those 2 are probably the best captains, but we'll definitely talk through if you can't get to either one of them for whatever reason, whatever else is out there. But those 2, Sam, even though on paper they're not playing teams that you'd expect to be really easy ones, if we were looking at this kind of on the schedule 36 weeks ago, now I think both of those are the clear stick-ons for this week.
Yeah, I would say so. And again, there's a little bit maybe sword shield thinking with these two. I think Watkins will be the higher owned and the more bought in out of the two because he's more easily accessible and also maybe the more fashionable pick right now. What Palmer's had a lot of hate recently, not been in great form generally over the last 10, 15 game weeks. So I think there'll be less of a crowd swell towards him. And for all of the other factors you just mentioned, Jackson being out, that's shifting the team chemistry a little bit. That all does make a difference. And I think that will speak volumes for the amount of people actually buying him this week. So again, with that in mind, if you still back him to do well, despite all of that, and you're maybe a more analytical or data-led manager, then Palmer is still coming out top of a lot of these algorithms. So it is an aggressive play that could work out. I do not hate it. But like you said, there are more qualitative factors that come into play here. And I think it will put off enough people. I think Watkins will be very important and popular for all of those reasons, almost in reverse. He'll be more bought in. And again, expected to do very well for all of the subjective, qualitative reasons that we know about Spurs and about Villa as of late. The other one I'd just chuck in because it's always, well, two to chuck in because it's always worth chucking them in. Never ever discount Salah. It's Brighton. It's not prime Arsenal defense that he's going up against here. Brighton are a decent defense, but they're not world beaters. Salah, even if they're on the beach, is never a bad captaincy shout. He could outscore all of these players. So don't be shocked if it happens. So don't discount him. And Mbeumo as well. At home to Fulham, it doesn't look like the sexiest fixture on paper, but the importance of having someone who's 90-minute nailed on, they are still playing for things as it stands and likely still will be come the time the game is actually played. And yeah, again, the data's looking very good as well. Fulham have dropped off a bit recently too. So I don't hate either of those. I think I'm likely to be captaining one of the two on screen, Watkins or Palmer. But if for whatever reason I don't get to Watkins, then I'm happy enough with Salah and Mbeumo probably as a vice in that scenario. So yeah, but all I'm basically saying is don't panic if you can't get to one of these two players and you're like, oh God, I have to captain Salah. That's still great. That's still fine. Like he's still a great player. So yeah, don't let crowd swell just get you caught up in that conversation where it's like, oh my God, I have to have Watkins because everyone's captaining him. It's not quite that important to have him. There are still other good options.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know what Watkins can be like, I suppose, every now and again. But I think that possibly the best. I think the only kind of extra point I put on, the top three according to the analytics crowd are Palmer 1, Watkins 2, Mbeumo 3. Yeah. If you are sat there after making transfer this week with a Haaland or a KDB, or you're thinking, oh, Eze's in form, I think the only thing that I would say about that is that there is a slight risk factor behind those picks, so that would maybe scare me off. And there is obviously a school of thought where you're like, oh, I've paid this much for Haaland, why am I not captaining him? But as you've just given voice to, Sam, probably the same logic applies to Salah. And at this point in the season, we're not looking for that. We're not looking for consistency over a long period of time. We're looking to maximize points over 1 week, which obviously we should probably be doing the whole time. But often there's a longer term kind of contextual factor involved. I place Watkins, Palmer, Mbeumo, and above kind of the players who are playing on Tuesday. I think I don't really kind of see a world where I'd be really considering them outside of that kind of Hail Mary circumstance we discussed earlier on. I mean, there's a few X narratives here, though. I mean, De Bruyne versus Bournemouth last home game. Is that going to be when he turns it on? I saw he hadn't scored a goal since February last year, Sam. Is this where the long range is going to come in? Vardy versus Ipswich, looking for that 200th goal. It feels like that is literally like written in the stars. So you're going to get 6 points, 12 points, I guess, out of that if you do captain Vardy. I don't know. Beto versus Southampton, of course, triple captain pick for the cheapies. There are a few options on the table. It just kind of, whatever's your vibe right now, kind of feels like the main kind of way to decide these things.
Yeah. The way I think about narrative, and I do like a good narrative, but we only ever remember the ones that actually come good. We never remember all of the ones that fail, and there are a lot of ones that fail that we just instantly forget about. So whilst I like a narrative, I like the 200 club for Vardy, I like Kevin De Bruyne's last home game. All of this is very romantic. I do like them, and it doesn't make them bad picks because there is a narrative, but I don't think it makes them tangibly much better. There might be a little bit extra emphasis on getting them chances, or if they're in a good position in the match, i.e. 2-3-0 up, they might be gifted a sideways pass just to tap one in, or a penalty for KDB. All of this sort of stuff might add a slight percentage point, but I don't think it's a needle mover enough to make me just go for the narrative, if that makes sense. I wouldn't put them ahead of anyone else just for that reason.
Cool. All right. Final bit of this week is our teams for the week ahead. So you're in a really complex position. So you've got Mateta, who, as you said, is almost definitely going to go. It's just a case of kind of how you then wiggle around, whether you take another transfer or whatever you decide to do, or whether you indeed decide to just think, oh, sod it, I'm just going to roll into game week 38 and have 2-3 transfers that week. Because as mentioned, the Wolves game is not that bad. It's just I've got a feeling that Nketiah probably maybe starts the Wolves game for Palace. I don't know. It just feels like that's kind of be what happens regardless.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a chance that Nketiah comes on in the FA Cup final, gets injured or red carded or whatever, and then Mateta has to play. So it can go the other way. But yeah, I think realistically, Mateta's the obvious transfer out here. I can't really find a scenario in which that doesn't make sense. Isak could be a sell, but I wouldn't sell him ahead of selling Mateta. Newcastle are still playing for tons. Isak's got a good home game against Everton, game week 38. I know he's got like this slight ongoing injury and he's going for an operation in the season break and all of that, but I think it's very unlikely he doesn't play good minutes in the last 2 games of the season, considering all they're fighting for. So yeah, it's Mateta out for me for a start, and then it's almost certain to be Watkins in, and then it's just a matter of, are any players worth a hit? Is it worth a hit removing Salah for Rodgers? Is it worth a hit removing Salah for Palmer? Is it, outside of that, it's probably no one else that would go. And I think in both cases, I'm slightly leaning towards no, although I might be convinced in either camp to just go aggressive on it. I also have a little bit of a future planning problem to think about, which is if I basically, if I bring in Watkins from Mateta, I'm almost certainly ruling myself out of Saka, because there's no good way of getting to him next week other than selling Salah, and I don't want to do that. So it kind of snookers me a little bit. Whereas if I can find another way, another combination, like selling Isak and Mateta for someone like Beto and Watkins, then I might be able to find a little like wiggle room in game week 38, take another hit and get to Saka alongside an Evan Nilsson up top or something. I haven't quite worked that out, and I'm not sure I love that either, to be honest. So I might just have to make peace with no Saka. And yeah,
I quite like with Isak. I mentioned him earlier on, though. I forgot to mention it during the main course of the pod, but there's it's been mentioned a few times that he's got like some sort of like sports hernia or something that's going to be operated on at the end of the year, and that's
that's what I said. Yeah,
buzzing around. So,
but I think he'll play though.
Yeah, I think he'll play the last 2 games. The Everton game is a good one. So, what we're going to do? I don't know, Sam.
Is it okay? So 2 questions. Is it worth a hit to get rid of Salah this week?
Probably not, given the underperformance.
Yeah, and there's a good enough chance he starts that.
I don't see why he wouldn't, to be honest. Yeah. But I mean, obviously we can't.
It could be. I don't know. I've just got a little feeling Nketiah could play there, but anyway.
Yeah.
So it would be Salah for Rodgers probably if that was the hit. Do we think that's worth it? Probably not, because it would have to pay off this week, because next week that position then becomes a Bournemouth mid probably. And then it is
United next week, so 38. So I mean,
Who else am I getting? Like, who else am I
Yeah.
getting a Bournemouth mid for though?
Yeah, or do you just kind of think, "Oh, Bournemouth rubbish, let's just leave that be"? I mean, that's another way of kind of thinking about it. Don't fixate on the Bournemouth mids. Just
Yeah,
think,
but
"Oh,
then
Aaron
I've
Rodgers
taken
the
a
last
hit
two."
for like for me that I might as well just not take the hit then and just go straight to another player in game week 38 because
Is
in
that-
mine, yeah, I don't know,
is-
-4 feels like a lot. Anyway, so yeah, that or Salah to Palmer and then to Saka after that would be the other aggressive play
yeah,
I could
the thing
take.
I'd,
But
or yeah, so Salah to Palmer, and then I suppose that does mean that you can do Watkins, and then you can kind of just do the chain on from Palmer to Saka, right? So take one's for this week, and then next
exactly.
week, yeah.
Exactly. And then I've got another discussion as to whether or not I take a -4 for a Bournemouth player or not. Which I could be tempted,
Sod it.
but
Why not? Why not?
who
Throw it all
cares
out.
at this point?
Eat it into the outer echelons. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares, honestly?
Yeah, I think the kind of the play here is obviously going to be Mateta out to somebody, and that probably is going to be Watkins, I think. And then
Yeah.
next week, that wipes you out, doesn't it? So you've got no way of kind of just getting you can't even reach Trossard or a Martinelli, can you? Really, other than selling a Bumo or a Bowen last
The
week.
max I can afford is Cliver at 6 for
Mm.
Saar next week. That's the most. I'd have like 0.5 in the bank to take Saar up to someone. So I could get to Marino at the moment.
That's okay.
That's
That
about
might
it.
be all right. That might be all right. I mean, I kind of be inclined to just kind of probably. I wouldn't want to do the Salah route. Sorry, do the Palmer route for you. I just kind of think, I just get Watkins in, just get that done, and then just next week figure out and see kind of which one of the particular options on the table suit me best. Maybe.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel very convincing though. I grant you. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're not. If you want to just maximize point scoring, I think maybe Mateta and an other. So Palmer, maybe just buying Palmer and Watkins, both of them would probably actually be where I'd go. Just because you're having max, you're looking for max fun, aren't you? You're looking to win that stressful, Sam, no matter what.
I wonder if I've got the money to do better, Mateta to Beto and then Saar up to Palmer. I might need to check that. I don't think I do, actually, thinking about it. But if I did, that would be tempting. I could be on board for that. But yeah. Anyway, I don't want to bore you with my team anymore.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look too terrible. For me, I've already done Evan Nielsen to Watkins, as discussed earlier on. I think I'm probably pretty much done for this week. Not done for this season. I was very close to saying that. Done for this week. Raya in goal, Guardiola, Milenkovic, Munoz at the back, Bowen, De Bruyne, who I'm probably going to keep. Ex-narrative, final home game that the Etihad, comes on the 60th minute and scores, or he starts and scores. Either one, he's going to score. Bumo, Salah, Isaac, who I'm happy to play at the moment, unless Howell does come out and say he's absolutely fine, in which case I will be selling him immediately because Howell's an investor at Liar. Watkins with the armband and then Visser. Absolutely fine with doing that. And next week I'll probably do De Bruyne to Saka or Martinelli or Trossard. Probably, I'd probably be thinking, do I get Saka or do I get Martinelli? Probably just get Saka and just end the season like that. I think that unless Watkins goes absolutely wild, and I haven't got any kind of massive differentials here. I mean, I'm really looking at all of my team getting kind of double-digit hauls for me to get anywhere near the top 100k and or in the conversations of 100k at the end of the season. So I think it's pretty much done. But yeah, Watkins in and captain for me. I could do De Bruyne to Palmer. I just don't really fancy it, to be honest. I don't know. I like if it wasn't De Bruyne's last game, I think I would be doing De Bruyne to Palmer. I just don't really feel it right now, Sam. I just feel like I want the narrative of that final game for De Bruyne.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's absolutely fair. And you're well set up already. I'm much better set up than I am at the moment. And I like the fact that you've got that second mid to transfer across to Saka next week as well. So yeah, I think you're on for a good finish for the season, I hope.
I'm not. It's going to be... I'll somehow end up being 300k after Rodgers scores a hat-trick. That's literally what's going to happen.
Well, it's fine. The water's warm over here. It's great. It's lovely at 300k. You're going to love it.
Yeah, dip my toes in the med of the 300k. Right. Okay. There we go. Before we start lamenting too much.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you all so much for listening in, as always, to Who Got the Assist. If you want to follow us on social media, on Blue Sky, it's WGTA and FPL Pricey on there for me. On Twitter, X, it's WGTA_FPL. Again, FPL Pricey on there for me. And Instagram Threads, it's WGTA.FPL, FPL Pricey again for me. If you did enjoy the pod, if you can do one or all of the following, including following us on those social channels, but also giving the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening, and of course leaving a like and hitting subscribe on YouTube if you're watching along, would be greatly appreciated. All of those things really do help us out, and as we reach the end of the season, it helps all the more. So thank you very much in advance.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for listening and watching. We hope it's just you think about the final throws of the dice, and we're back at this time next week for our penultimate pod of the season, previewing the final day. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?